Hello, good afternoon. My name is Lady Elizabeth, and I'm your global JamAfrican soul healer. And today, I am here on my second video to tell you, or to show you, or to speak with you, and talk with you about when trauma has not healed. Narcissistic trauma. Even in the most spiritual places, cannot override emotional pain. This episode that I'm going to talk about is to try to teach global JamAfrican women how to recognize when they're spiritually present but emotionally burdened, and how to start processing it, because we need to start processing it. Now, my sister, I am the owner of the JamAfrican Healing Vault, where we don't fake healing. We walk through it with courage and spiritual regulation. I want to share some of my story with you that might just be your story too, or something extremely similar. You know, one day I was sitting in church, because I go to church a lot. I'm very spiritually minded. And everybody was shouting, and not really shouting, but praising and worshiping. And I had my best clothes on. I even tithe. I worship. I love to worship. But you know, after church was over, I sat in my car and I just couldn't move for 30 minutes. I was just frozen. You know, I didn't really realize at the time I was literally having a breakthrough on the outside, but I was literally shutting down on the inside. Now, what I recognize is that trauma just doesn't leave because the spirit gets stirred. Many of us shout in service, we worship, we come home and we pray. But you know what? When we get within our circle, within our home life, we shut down, because the people around us are the ones that's literally emitting that covert narcissistic abuse. Now, let me explain to you why my body shut down after church. Because I was heading home to a marriage that wasn't working. And it was hiding in my nervous system. The body does keep score, even when the spirit is willing. Now, your souls, feel disconnected because you're praising with pressure instead of peace. You're anxious because you say, when this church service is over, I've got to go back home and face what I don't want to face. Example, I used to raise my hands in worship, but you know what happened? I felt totally empty afterwards, because even though the message was good and everything and everybody was awesome around me, I felt empty. That was not God's fault. That was simply unprocessed emotional pain. Let me explain to you what that moment taught me, though, about emotional regulation. What the Spirit of the Lord showed me. That 30-minute pause was my body begging for me to begin to feel. I learned how to check in, right? What I'm carrying and who is draining me this week. I know I was being drained, but I simply did not understand and know that it was emotional dysregulation. It was covert narcissistic abuse wrapped up in that. I began to ask, right? What am I pretending that is okay and that it really is not? Emotional regulation simply means honoring the silence before the scream. To tell the truth, I was feeling it. I was honestly feeling it. But you know what, today? I'm in a different position right now. And as we go along on this YouTube journey with me, I'm going to share some nuggets. I'm going to share my story. And it's going to be raw. It's going to be imperfect. Sis, if you have ever had that moment, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're in church. It could mean that you went to the store and the store looked beautiful, but when you came out, you knew what you had to go home to. If you ever had this moment, right, where you didn't want to go home after church, you didn't want to go home after you go to the supermarket, you didn't want to go home just to even cook any food, you didn't want to go home and clean any house, you were sick and tired, right, of being sick and tired. Have you ever shouted on Sunday but cried on Monday and Tuesday, only to go back to prayer meeting, to come back again to cry on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, only to fulfill your duties at home? The same place that you're supposed to feel safe in is a place that you didn't want to go back home to, but you had to anyway. I have 3 tips to give you. I want you to pause after every spiritual experience. Don't rush out. Try to enjoy the moment. Number 2, I want you to journal what triggered you that particular week. And number 3, I want you to use scriptures not just to shout, but to soothe your soul. Psalm 34 and verse 18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. I want to share something else with you. I remember one Sunday when I came home after church, and I had left my husband at the time lying on the couch. He had gone out and he had driven for, I think, Uber or Lyft, I'm not sure. And I left him there, and I have my daughter and my niece living with me, and my son and I would always get up and go to church on a Sunday. And somebody said to me, well, I needed to be a woman who, how should I put it? I needed to be this woman who would literally, based on my behavior, convince him to come to church. But one of the things that I did recognize, I didn't have to do that. Because, I listened to somebody that was preaching. Oh, it was T.D. Jakes. And you know what he said? And it wasn't exactly in the way that I'm describing it, but he said it anyway. If he does not listen to God, he will not listen to you. Let me say it again. If he does not listen to God, he's not going to listen to you. And that was the problem, right? I was spiritually being sucked into covert narcissistic abuse while my husband was not going to church and he was not even submitting to the Lord Jesus Christ. So I discovered that day, and just doing several different things. I was going to church. I was going to celebrate recovery. I had to get out of the house a lot in order to even begin to process what I was going through. Because my daughter now started acting up, right? That's a totally different story. And I do have it on my agenda to get to that story. She does not want me to say her name, and I will never say her name on camera. I just won't do it. But she began to feel the pressure of what I was going through. And so that kind of really pushed me to begin to get myself healed. Because I said, if I can help my children, even though I didn't recognize what was going on at the time, I went to a pastor and he said to me, we carry this healing ministry called Celebrate Recovery, which I've never heard of before. And I immediately looked at him and I said to him, I am not a drug dealer. I don't do drugs at all. I don't do any kind of drugs. I don't smoke. The holy Christian thing, right? And I said, I don't do any of that. He said, no, this is for when life literally comes at you and traumatizes you, this is for life's healing purpose. Just if you have a death in the family, if you have a divorce, if you have a separation, if you have emotional issues going on in your marriage and stuff. I didn't know at the time that I was experiencing emotional and covert narcissistic trauma, but I went anyway. So here is what I can say. That day in my car literally changed me. I started on a journey that I never thought would do anything. But I can tell you, I started showing up emotionally for myself. Not just spiritually anymore, because there are two parts to it. Life is spiritual and life is physical. So I started showing up emotionally, not just spiritually alone, to cover the mask. And now, because of that, I help JamAfrican women across the entire globe regulate, recover, and restore. You can be facing a divorce like myself. You can be facing where your children is getting traumatized and they're feeling some things that you're not even feeling because you are dealing with your marriage first. So you can't really navigate both trauma at the same time, and it becomes difficult because you want to save them. And so I just simply began showing up emotionally for myself. Now, if you want to be in the place that I'm in today, totally emotionally healed, and I'm going to be telling you a lot more of my story and what the Lord has really opened up my eyes to regarding that, which is appalling, but it's grounding. It helped to ground me. What I have done now is I have opened up a vault, a digital healing vault, specifically for Black women globally to emotionally, mentally, psychologically heal from narcissistic abuse and recover. So what I would like you to do, I have the link in the bio, and I'm going to ask you, my call to action to you today, for you to start your healing. I want you to, one, like the video, subscribe if any of this resonates with you and you want to hear more, and share this video if any of it spoke to your spirit. And thirdly, I want for you to drop a comment if you've ever sat in your car, not necessarily coming from church, it could be from anywhere, alone, dreading going back home to that kind of situation, but you know you had to go back home. I had to pause, because when I look and see where I am today versus where I used to be, I want you to join me on this journey. You're worthy. You're worthy for more. God made you uniquely and amazingly different. He said somewhere in Psalms that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I have knitted you. I took the time to knit you in your mother's womb. So as I said, if this resonates with you, the link is in the video. I would like you to go there. Check out all my healing products. I have some planners. I have some prayers. And I have different mini courses and other digital products in there, and I'm going to be adding more as well. And pick one that resonates with you and begin your healing process, your healing progress right now. Thank you so much for allowing me to share. Thank you for dealing with the rawness. It was not perfect, but I'm going to be improving. This is only my second video. God bless you, and I will see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.